I'm picking up where we left off. This is part 3 of chapter 7, learning. Decisions about how to chunk information depends on schemas. Schemas are cognitive structures in long-term memory that help us perceive, organize, process, and use information. Culture shapes our schemas and can lead to biased encoding. Schemas influence how we encode information in our daily lives. We will cover schemas more in depth later. You have schemas for different things. For example, you have a schema for shopping at a grocery store. All right, your schema for shopping in a grocery store in the United States might not work so well if you use that same schema in a market in France or a market in Morocco. As a result of the limitations in your schema, you might make mistakes when food shopping outside the US. Through learning from your mistakes, though, you will adjust your schema. Information is stored in association networks. Collins and Loftus's model of networks of associations, where each unit of information about an item is a single node in the network. For example, the words red, vehicle, and emergency work in relation for a fire engine. The closer the nodes, the stronger the association between them, and therefore the more likely it is that activating one node will activate the other. Spreading activation models work as stimuli in working memory activate specific nodes in long-term memory, making retrieval easier. Here's a graphic from a book to help make sense of that. In the semantic network, similar concepts are connected through their associations. You can see the words red, vehicle, ambulance. They're all related to different things and they're interconnected. So if you activate one of these nodes, you're more likely to activate the rest of them. So if you think of red, that might help you to remember all the other things that are colored red that are in your memory. All right, a retrieval cue, as we have referenced, is anything that helps a person or a non-human animal recall a memory. Retrieval cues, including contextual cues and internal states, help us access stored information. Contextual cue is a situation, and an internal state is how your body was doing at that exact moment. The encoding specificity principle is the idea that any stimulus that is encoded along with an experience can later trigger a memory of the experience. Memory can be enhanced by context-dependent memory, when the recall situation is similar to the encoding situation, and state-dependent memory. This is when a person's internal states match during the encoding and recall. Context-dependent memory also references the idea that if you were to sit in a classroom with people in it and study for a test, and then later take that test in that same classroom with the same people in it, or even other people, that you would be able to recall the memories of the material more easily because you were in that same context-dependent situation. Same works for state-dependent memory. A unique study showed that we encode the physical context of a memory along with the information, and the context can help retrieve the memory. Here, people learned lists of words, either on land or underwater. When they had to recall the words later on, they remembered more words if they were tested in the same environment where they had learned the words. So if they were on land and they learned the words, and later they took a test and they were on land, they were able to remember those words more easily. Same thing goes for people that learned it in the water and then took the test in the water. If you put them in the different situations, they would not be able to remember it as well, as shown by the bar graphs. All right, now we're going to talk about prospective memory. This is the remembering to do something at some future time. Remembering to do something takes up valuable cognitive resources and reduces the number of items we can deal with in working memory or the number of things that we can attend to at any moment. Without a retrieval cue, remembering requires conscious effort. All right, now we're going to talk about mnemonics. You may have heard this term before. These are learning aids or strategies that improve recall through the use of retrieval cues. Mnemonics such as the method of loci and verbal mnemonics involve the use of retrieval cues to improve recall. Method of loci, or memory palace, is the associating items you want to remember with physical locations. All right, and back to long-term memory. What are the different long-term memory systems? Long-term memory is composed of these multiple systems. Scientists do not agree on the number of human long-term memory systems. Long-term memories can differ in how they are acquired and how they are stored and retrieved. Fundamental differences exist between explicit and implicit memory, episodic and semantic memory, and procedural memory. Implicit memory is the system underlying unconscious memories. These are memories that do not require effort to remember. As opposed to explicit memory, this is the system underlying conscious memories. This requires effort to remember. There's also declarative memory. This is the cognitive information retrieved from explicit memory, knowledge that can be declared. All right, now we're going to get a little bit more specific. Episodic memory is the memory for one's personal past experiences. This would be your birthday party of last year, your Christmas gathering of your family from whatever year, going all the way back. There's also semantic memory. This is memory for knowledge of facts independent of personal experience. This would be the kind of memory you would use if you went on the Jeopardy game show on television. Evidence suggests that episodic and semantic systems of explicit memory are separate and can be found in cases of brain injury in which semantic memory is intact even though episodic memory is impaired, for example in the case of HM. So episodic memory and semantic memory are both explicit memories. They take effort to recall. All right, so those were explicit memories. Now we're going to talk about the implicit memory, and it consists of memories that exist without our awareness of them and that do not require conscious attention. Procedural memory. This is a type of implicit memory that involves motor skills, habits, and other behaviors. These are used to coordinate muscle movements when you ride a bike. In Jacobi's false fame effect, it demonstrates how our implicit formation of attitudes can affect our beliefs about people. There were 2 studies. The first study was about pronunciation. Participants were given a list of made-up names. In a second, later study, that the participants were told unrelated, were given a list of names and had to decide if any of them were famous. They misjudged the names of these people because they remembered them without effort from the previous study. In that case, they assumed they were famous because they remembered the name. All right, here's the handy graphic from the books, lays out long-term memory storage, separates it into the explicit and implicit categories. And below that you can see that episodic memory and semantic memory are forms of implicit memory, and that procedural memory and classical conditioning, if you'll remember when we covered that, that was the formation of these connections that would not require thought. All right, and that concludes part 3 of Chapter 7, Learning.